Testing, testing, testing. 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 Got it. Alright, we are live. Welcome back to another episode of Bog Talks. That's what we're going to call this little talk show. Today I'm going to be discussing the true enemy of the American people, and it's probably not what you think. And the definitive answer that I've come up with from what I've seen in recent years is the media. Because, have you ever heard the phrase, united we stand, divided we fall? I truly believe that to be 100% to be the case. Now, this isn't just an American problem. I think this is a problem around the entire world. But basically, I believe that the media actually tries to divide us to pursue their own agenda. And sometimes they bend the truth and hide facts and maybe say stuff that isn't true to whatever fits their agenda, or they only specifically decide to report on a certain subject. So, let me give you an example. So, with all this ICE bullshit going on with them, deporting people and maybe being a little bit more violent than they should have been, I think most people can acknowledge that sometimes what they're doing is not exactly okay. But there was this case I just read in the news recently, and I heard on Steven Crowder's show where this guy got deported, and of course, I think it was MSNBC or BBC News, very left-leaning liberal news media said, "Oh, this poor guy who's been here for 30 years gets deported," and that's kind of what the point is, especially on the front pages, to get your attention and make it seem like, oh, this is such a horrible tragedy. But if you scroll down like 18, 19 pages, you can see that this guy had raped a 12-year-old girl 8 years ago and was beating his wife. So it's like, why the hell was this guy still in the country after raping a little kid? He shouldn't have even been here to begin with because he's illegal. And the fact that he wasn't deported before just shows how corrupt the government truly, truly is. So that's just one case where they try to only show portions of the story and hide specific information to fit their agenda. Same with the whole George Floyd thing. According to the autopsy, he actually, I believe, he died to fentanyl overdose. He didn't die to that cop who put the knee on his shoulder, and that got so much media attention, so much coverage, riots, cities burned. But then in North Carolina, that white girl who was attacked for being white on the train and got stabbed to death, of course the media said pretty much absolutely nothing about it, because it didn't fit the narrative. So I think that's really what's torn the American people apart. And then I think it's also had a very, very negative influence, especially when it comes to these mass shootings. I'm not going to try to get too off topic here, but you know, guns have always been around in the United States, always been around. You used to be able to buy a machine gun in the 1970s, and there weren't any mass shootings back then. There weren't any school shootings every other day. And gun control is actually, like, the control itself and the process has actually gotten a lot harder in the last 20, 30 years. It's gone, but gun violence has gone up. So, you know, the question is, why is that the case? And I think it's truly because of the media. I think it's because of the exposure. Like, I think young, demented people see that. People go out, like, you know, all these psycho school shooters go out, and then another demented person says, hey, I want to do what that guy's doing. So I think in that sense specifically, and just violence in general, I think people see things in the media and people being violent, and they want to copy that behavior. It sort of becomes, I guess, a bad trend. I guess you would say it becomes a trend when shit happens. I mean, same with this horrible tragedy that just happened in Australia. So, and they were both legal firearms owners who were using bolt-action hunting rifles to carry out this attack. So, I don't think that, again, don't want to get too off topic, but I don't think it's the guns. This isn't a topic about guns, but I don't think we can blame that I think it's got to do with the propaganda and the brainwashing of the people of our country. But I think there's a very, very deeper. It goes deeper than we can even think. I think we're just seeing the surface, and there's a whole other iceberg underneath. I think that somebody at the top wants us divided. I think they're scared of us uniting. I think it's always going to be us versus them and left versus right. Because if we unite together, then that's their absolute worst nightmare. Because we outnumber them 1,000,000 to 1. There's a lot more of us than there are of them. And to maintain their power and their control, they need us divided. They have to. They can't afford for us to step together. They can't afford for us to hold hands and join, because that's what they're absolutely scared of. So I think, and I don't think that's just in America. I think that has to do. I think that's around the world, and I think the people that are at the top 1%, that we probably will never know who they are. They know that too. They know that if there is a big awakening and we do unite together, I think they know that they're screwed and they're dug around the grave. So I think that's another part of the reason that the media actually tries to divide us, because the people at the top are kind of spewing this shit in their heads and telling them what to do and what to say and kind of what agenda to push to keep us at bay.
Much appreciated.
So anyway, yeah, I think that overall the real villain of the American people is the media. It truly is. And then there's this other thing that I think Trump is suing BBC News because of the whole January 6th riot insurrection thing, because BBC only showed part of his speech where it made him sound like, you know, we're going to the Capitol, we're gonna take it over. But what he actually said in the real full clip, he said, we're gonna be peaceful, we're not gonna break windows, we're not barbarians. But BBC didn't show that second part of it because they wanted to make him seem like he was like a dictator Hitler guy. So I mean, just like, you know, whatever fits their narrative, you know, it's always pointing at the left, pointing at the right, pointing at this guy. But I think the real problem is we need to focus on the people at the top who's really controlling everything. The people whose names you don't see in the paper. The people that hide behind closed doors and are really calling the shots. I would say our politicians and people that we pin the blame on are basically just puppets. They're not actually the ones at all. They're being, someone's hand is up their ass telling them what to say and what to do. And we always just kind of, I think a lot of people are very gullible and they kind of just go with it. And I'm not saying that everything's a conspiracy theory. Obviously there's some things in the media reports that's, you know, true. And objectively, you know, I read the news every day and I'm surprised and stuff like that, but it's not technically the story. Specifically the story is, I'm thinking it's more of the agenda that they're trying to push. That one side wants this, one side wants that, you know, it's always the other person's fault. We don't ever look like, you know, to the behind the closed doors. We just look at what's in front of us. So anyway, I think that's just a issue that we're all gonna have for a while until we can I hope someday these assholes get exposed to who they really are. But yeah, my conclusion is that the media is the real, true enemy of the American people. I think it's made us far more divided in recent years. I don't even think it's really a left or right thing, even though it seems like the left does it more with Trump. But it seems like it's always just anti-this, anti-that, and I think, because, you know, politics used to be kind of boring, and now it's like people end friendships over it. People stop talking to people over it. There's so many more, there's so much more violence over it, especially it's, you know, it's like back-to-back-to-back shootings, and I think the media does have a negative effect on that. So, yeah, that's my take on it, and I think that's a lot of people's take on it. I think it's the media. I think it will be the media until we can finally prove it. We can see there's even this clip of a lot of like 30 different news anchors saying some members of the media have, you know, chose to be dishonest, and they're all saying the exact same thing, so it all seems kind of scripted. So I think the issue is the media wants you to basically like brainwash you to make them think like them and force you how to think instead of having your own opinion. And I think that's kind of the bigger picture. People at the top want to think like them, and they want to try and force how you think. They don't want you to think for yourself or have an opinion. And God forbid if a Republican agrees with the Democrat or vice versa, you know, you're a traitor and you're useless and you're, you know, a racist and everything like that. And, you know, the whole labeling thing has gotten out of hand. And that's another thing about with Pierce Morgan and Fuentes, and why I think a lot of people say that Nick absolutely destroyed him, is because it's just labeling. It's, you know, racist, sexist. It's a lot of gotcha. It's like, instead of actually talking about issues that matter, it's, are you a racist? Are you a sexist? Are you a misogynist? It's like, that's not how a conversation should go. It shouldn't be a bunch of gotcha moments. You're allowed to confront people on, you know, what they think, and there are genuine racists and misogynists and sexists out there, but that shouldn't be your whole personality. It shouldn't always be, and another, you know, the main point, another issue I find, not to single anyone out, but mainly on the left, it's like they kind of try, they on the far left, you know, it's just, they try to find a way to be offended, and I know the right also has stuff like this, and it's, you know, there's specific religious groups that it's like they just look for something to be offended by. You know, they can't take a joke, they can't handle some friendly banter, they can't handle some shit talking, and they just, you know, they're offended by everything, and then they take stuff out of context, and then, you know, this guy's seen as a racist or, you know, a horrible person. And I think that's another reason why the media is so horrible, is they don't really understand what context is, and they show these shortened little clips of that they've put together that makes someone look like a bad person when really they don't show the whole clip. Or you know, obviously a lot of people talk shit and they say stuff that's not, they don't really mean, and they say stuff like funnily on stream for views and they want the reaction, but you know, they make these little clips and they say, this person's evil, he's an anti-Semite, he's a racist, he's all this, he's that, blah, 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 blah. And they do it for views because that's what, you know, that's what people bring in. They read the headline, oh my god, this person's a racist, but they don't do any research on their own. They kind of just take what the media throws at them and say, oh, good enough, you know, we'll take that, that's all you get. Yep, oh, this person's a racist, yep, Reddit here, folks, CNN, that's true. Whatever they say is true, so I would definitely encourage everyone here to do research. You're definitely going to want to see statistics. I definitely like statistics. Like, a lot of people say, oh my god, guns kill so many people every single year. And I was like, yeah, you know, that seems kind of true. And then I look it up, and according to the FBI, 40,000 people died to guns. I think it was either last year or the year before. And then 20,000 of those deaths were suicides, so I don't really count that because that's just, you know, self-inflicting harm. And then like another 12,000 of those deaths was gang violence. So if you add everything up to like just like absolute insane gun violence, I think it maybe added up to 3,000 or 4,000. And then defensive uses of firearms and people defending themselves and saving lives, it's like on the low end it's like 600,000. So, you know, you just kind of have to do your own research and see. And that's according to the FBI. And obviously, I know they can kind of exaggerate the statistics, but I don't really see why they would have a reason to lie about that. Because it's just the pure numbers based off what they report. It's not like, you know, and then obviously you can filter it by like suicides and organized mafia and gang violence. You know, a lot more people die to actually baseball bats and knives than to guns. In the U.S., which you wouldn't think that's true, but it is. A lot more people die to that because the media paints this picture in your head that makes it seem like, you know, this is a certain way, or this, you know, this is a certain way and stuff like that. So, and I mean, that goes for anything too. I mean, that goes for conflicts with other countries, that goes for wars, that goes for, you know, sometimes they try and downplay stuff like it's not very, like with the BLM riots back in 2020, they were literal cities like Seattle, like Chicago, on fire, and then they say, oh, mostly peaceful protests, while they're burning cars and looting stores and killing people and jumping people and fighting people. And it's like, yeah, they're betraying that because that's what fits their agenda. But then people will see, like, you know, for example, like on the right, they'll see like one crime go on in a city like Seattle or New York or Chicago and say, this is what happens when you know, when cities are overtaken by immigrants and you know, the cops aren't tough enough on crime. And, you know, that might be true to a certain extent, but they exaggerate to you know, how bad it really is. Like, you know, there might be like a case that's like 1 in 100, and they make it seem like it happens every single day there. You know, a lot of cities are, you know, typically like, are gonna have a lot of violence and crime, but that doesn't mean the whole city is like that. You know, that's just the way that the media portrays it. So, anyway, so yeah, that is that will do it. I've been yapping for the last 15 minutes. This was just a short commentary, in my opinion, on why I would not recommend any of you guys to trust the media. As you know, as it stands, I would definitely encourage you to do your own research, and if the stats that they're telling you and the facts that they're telling you matches up with the research that you do and you find, I would say great. You know, maybe for once they're telling the truth, or they're not like bending the truth, but definitely they're gonna lie, they're gonna exaggerate the truth, they're gonna underplay the truth, they're gonna do whatever they can to make sure that they maintain control and that we're divided, because their absolute worst fear, in my objective opinion, is that we as Americans all unite together. I think that that is their #1 worst fear. Anyway, thanks for watching. For more videos like this, make sure